Well, first and foremost, Daphne, I'd like to thank you for, coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. So I saw that you're a nurse manager. Is that what you do for
I
a living?
am. I have been a nurse, a registered nurse since 2002,
Yeah.
and I have had the privilege of being in nurse leadership. I want to say maybe now for the last 16, 17 years.
Oh, wow. So a considerable amount of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What made you decide to go into the leadership role?
It actually came to me. I didn't go
Hmm.
looking for it. So as a nurse, a new nurse, when at the hospital that I worked at, my nurse manager trained every new nurse to be what they call a charge nurse. So you're pretty much
Right.
the person who's at the desk and you're coordinating the admissions coming to the floor.
Hmm.
At that time, we had a lot of licensed practical nurses employed.
Hmm.
So as an RN, you oversaw the work of an LPN. So all the admissions, all the new patients from the ED and surgery, I had to assess before endorsing to an LPN.
Hmm.
So it kind of started off that way, and the time the manager really liked how I managed myself as a leader in that role, and I then went from that to becoming an assistant nurse manager on a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift.
Yeah.
And I liked it. Surprisingly, I didn't think that I would care to do leadership because I was very young at the time. Most of the nurses were older than me. So to earn their respect, I was kind of, afraid of it. There's a saying that nurses tend to eat their young. And, but it wasn't that at all. They really supported me and they helped me grow into the role. And from there, it just became one leadership position after another, after another, after another. And
Yeah.
so I stuck with it.
Huh. That's yeah. So my wife is a LPN, but now we kind of thought about it, and she decided to go for her RN. So she's 1 year in, 1 year left for her RN, and it's a lot of work, and it's interesting, right? Because in a position of like leadership, it's almost like you need somebody to like notice you, especially when you're that young. It's like there, and I wonder why some, you mentioned that some of the nurses were older than you. I wonder why they didn't make the change to go to a manager role, like why they stayed as an RN. Is there like benefits to not moving up in management?
Yes, there actually is. So, although on paper, and I'm going to start off with money,
Hmm.
unfortunately, just because it is a driving factor,
Right,
to
right,
making the decisions that we make, because we have a lifestyle and a cost of living that we have to support.
right.
And with leadership, yes, we do make more when it comes to a salary, but it's a salaried position. So you don't get paid for any extra time that you put in. So you work, you're supposed to work 40 hours a week, but it is a 24-hour, 7-day a week responsibility.
Mm.
And your job description, or the guidelines when it comes to a nurse leader, says that you have 24/7 accountability for your unit.
Yeah.
And that is not time that you get compensated for. It's not time that's incentivized in any way. You're working extra hours. You don't get paid overtime. You don't get paid time and a half if you work holidays. So for some people, that is a deciding factor when it comes to leadership. Furthermore, leadership positions is a Monday through Friday job. You report to your job Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 9 to 6, however the hours are.
Mhm.
Nurses work 12-hour shifts. They only have to come in 3 days a week.
Yeah,
And then they
yeah.
have 4 days off, which they could plan any way that they want. I've had some nurses work 3 days and they have 7 days off straight and then come back for another 3 shifts,
Yeah.
and for flexibility, family life, vacationing, whatever it may be, or even working a second job. It allows them that flexibility. So some people are comfortable with that and prefer that versus, the daily responsibilities of a nurse leader.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was one of the driving factors for us deciding that for my wife to go ahead and go to RN, because because we were thinking, well, the schedule is so good, like 3 days a week. That's such a, like, it leaves so much free time to do,
It does.
whatever you want. And so, yeah, definitely, like in LPN, they don't really have that as much. Like primarily, her her options were like clinics and retirement, like I don't know what you would call them. I don't want to say it, like rehabilitate, I guess, centers or
Right, like the
yeah,
nursing homes
nursing
or
homes.
the
That's
assisted
it.
living. Mhm.
Right. So, and a lot of those are like, also like scheduled like Monday through Friday and so forth.
Yes.
Before she went to school for RN, she was in dermatology clinic, and it was like that Monday through Friday. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, the fact that you can just work 3 days is, huge, for us
Right,
at least.
and you
Right.
then and some of our nurses, some nurses are able to take vacation without using their vacation time.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So then
Huge
they
deal.
build up this really great time off bank that they could use in case they have sick children or an elderly parent they have to take care of, and not necessarily have to, worry about
Yeah.
um, using their time. And if they never take vacation time just because of the way their days are planned out, what's nice is that some organizations offer you where they pay you out your paid time off,
Hmm.
so you can pretty much cash it in,
Yeah.
and that's extra money on your check.
Yeah, and I find that it's huge for you as far as like when you were younger to move into that role and not have to deal with as much of resentment, because I could definitely see something like that happening.
It
Um, you
right.
know, it could be very problematic. So,
It can't be, but I was groomed under these
mhm,
nurses, and maybe that was the benefit. I didn't come in as a new leader for them. They trained me and
mhm,
they mold me. And
right.
I think so that when they know that they had some part in helping me become the nurse that I was, and then growing into that leadership role, I think maybe even some of them felt proud that they had something to do
Mhm,
with that, because like I said, they groomed me into my role as a new nurse. And so I was, I took that role and everything that they imparted in me seriously,
mhm,
to move into something like that.
right.
It wasn't always easy. There were times that some of them they weren't very cooperative, and, they still kind of tested me and gave me a hard time. But, one of the most important things in any type of relationship, especially working relationship, is just effective communication.
Mhm,
And as a leader, we have to learn to listen and know what's going on with our team, so we make sure to respond appropriately. So whenever I notice someone that just wasn't, I don't want to say on their best behavior, but whenever I notice like a behavioral change, it
mhm,
was important for me to pull them aside and be like, hey, what's going on? Are you having a rough day? Do you feel overwhelmed? Let me know how I can help.
right.
And I think, just them realizing someone even took the time to notice and ask and listen,
Right.
it did earn a lot of respect,
Right.
and
I mean, that's a
cooperation.
huge, yeah, that's a huge thing, because as most everybody probably listening to this have had supervisors that were poor and some that were great. And a lot of the differences is the managers treated you like a real person, like with real
Yes.
like they, you potentially got real problems like everybody else. So when a
Hmm.
person, when they pull you aside and not make it a public thing, but more of like a just one-on-one, it goes a long way. Now obviously I understand, like if behavioral problems continue, then there's steps that need to be taken, but
Correct.
you don't need to take that initial step, that drastic. It
Right.
could just be something, face to
Oh,
face, kind of heart to heart kind of
yes,
situation. Yeah, for
exactly.
sure. So what do you manage, like what team, what department, I guess I should say?
So currently I am the nurse leader for a cardiac telemetry unit. I
Okay.
actually manage two departments. I manage the nursing side of it, where our patient population are mostly patients with cardiac and respiratory issues.
Hmm.
Most recently, COVID patients, because my unit was designated to a COVID unit.
Hmm.
And I also manage what we call a centralized telemetry department. So our patients, when they require their hearts to be monitored, we put, like a holster, a monitor on them,
Yeah.
and it's monitored by a centralized area. I have monitor techs, people who are specially trained to watch patients for dysrhythmias, etc. So those are my two departments.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with heart. My mom works as a perfusionist in
Okay.
Vanderbilt, so there's a lot of like heart stuff going on there. Like anytime they have surgeries, it's always like cardiac surgeries usually.
Right.
So where are you located, if you don't mind me
I am
asking?
located in Miami, Florida, specifically South Miami.
Okay, so how have you noticed, if any, changes with regard to like the vaccine coming out and you being assigned and working that COVID situation, so to speak? Have you noticed any changes or anything like that?
Big changes.
Yeah.
So, when the pandemic first hit us, it probably was one of the most, I don't want to say traumatic experiences for me as a nurse, but I guess you could say that, because so much of what I knew and did, not just as a nurse, but even as a parent, changed. My children, their dad lives in Tallahassee, so they've been with him for a year. And, the way that I came home and the way that I left home and the way that I had to show up to work, it was just so different. Now things, it feels like it's back to normal, but it's not back to normal. But I have noticed, since I guess maybe because of the vaccine, we have become a little bit more lax. So for example, yesterday, I took a day trip to Orlando for the Orlando Europa. I was invited to speak on a panel, and I noticed a lot of those plazas off the turnpike, I was walking in with a mask, because the last time I traveled that road, you were required to wear a mask when you went into the gas stations or these food plazas. And yesterday, that wasn't the case. I saw the gas station attendees without masks. I saw people walking in without masks, and I'm just like, did something change,
Yeah.
So yeah, I've noticed that we are a little bit more open to going away from the mask. As a matter of fact, too, I just did Puerto Rico Pro, and I went to the Bahamas. I was away for a week, and when I came back to work, one of the things that we did every morning when we entered our hospital was that we had to check our temperature at a machine. And we had this app on our phone that we had to log into, answer a couple of questions to make sure that we weren't experiencing any symptoms. So when I pulled up to work and I went to go to the app, I couldn't log in. And I'm just like, what's going on? I didn't change my password. Why am I locked out? I show up to work at the entrance and I go to check my temperature. Security is like, oh, you don't have to do that anymore. Oh, and you don't even have to worry about the app. You just have to wear your mask. We're still wearing a mask in the hospital. I'm like, oh, that's why I couldn't log in. And that was just a week. I was only gone a week. So yeah, things are definitely kind of going back to normal, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because so I went to Academy Sports and there was an older man there and he started talking to me and I was wearing my mask. And he was like, "Oh, you don't have to wear that in here." And he wasn't wearing his. And I was thinking to myself, "You are the prime, person that should be wearing a mask." But I obviously didn't tell him that. But
right, because of his age.
Yeah. So and he was like, "Oh, you don't have to wear that if you don't want to." And I'm like, I think I probably should, and so it is interesting how people's mentality is. I think what probably the vaccine did was, at least partially, some people were already not wanting to wear the mask anyway, and the vaccine gave them a reason not to. So, people just say, "Oh, I'm vaccinated, so I don't need to wear it,"
But interestingly, too, I mean, there have been some cases though where people are vaccinated and they've contracted COVID.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. But what I tell people, because, we've had that situation with some of our clients and they would be upset, visibly upset. Like, oh, I got the vaccine and now I have COVID. But there was never really any word anywhere it was said that if you get vaccinated, you're not going to contract COVID. It's just like any virus. It just lessens the severity of the virus, which is why the vaccine was being promoted, just like the flu vaccine, right? Most of us get it every year, but we still get the flu. It's just that it helps, lessen the severity of how this virus, affects your body.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I am seeing that the treatment for COVID is quick. You know, we don't have people staying in the hospital for days. We don't have people who need, you know, artificial ventilation or supplemental, you know, high flow oxygen. They come in, they get treated with, you know, IV steroids. We give this IV medication called remdesivir for 5 days, and we're able to send them home, you know, wish them well, and, you know, hope. And most of the time, no one comes back, you know, as far as a readmission is concerned. So I think that we've honed in on how to treat it more effectively, that it's not as scary as it was. And maybe too, not just because of the vaccine, but because we've been able to figure out how to treat the virus, that maybe we're a little bit more relaxed too about it.
Yeah, I think the word vaccine can be really misrepresenting. Like, it's, people think of the word, oh, vaccine, so they think it's completely protecting me.
Right, it's a cure.
Right. And from what I remember, when the vaccines came out, like you mentioned, there was no talk about this being a preventative measure. It was talk about it just making sure that if you do get it, you're not, or at least less likely to die from it. And
exactly.
So people acted like taking the vaccine somehow like just protects you 100%. But I knew my my brother-in-law and his wife, they know people that have contracted, you know, COVID after the vaccine, and not just a few. It happens all the time, because it doesn't it doesn't necessarily protect you from the virus itself, from contracting it. So, and I think some people just, I don't know if that's, they intentionally just, I think some people intentionally just choose not to believe it. And then others just aren't educated in what the vaccine is. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Definitely interesting. So, what have you seen, like the Delta variant much? I know that's the biggest thing right now.
Say again?
The Delta variant.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No.
They said it's spreading pretty rapidly, but I guess it's not everywhere, you know.
No, thankfully, no, we haven't seen that here.
Yeah. Do you have like is there a preference, or from a professional standpoint of a vaccine? Is there any like real significant differences between like Pfizer and Moderna? And, you know, I know Johnson & Johnson was pulled at a moment, that one.
Right. No, there hasn't been. We offered both to our employees at the hospital. I personally received the Pfizer because that's what was available at the time that I scheduled my vaccination. But no, I haven't seen a difference. I know that there was a comparison between Moderna and Pfizer as far as the effectiveness and side effects, and they were pretty similar.
Right.
Johnson & Johnson, and you know, just to be honest, I kind of just didn't entertain.
They make lotions, don't they?
Unfortunately, because of all of the publicity behind it, that just wasn't positive. And you know, I do know someone in the bodybuilding industry who received the Johnson & Johnson and posted her experience with it. And it was scary. I was scared for her, you know, because she talked about developing some type of rash. She knew of a gentleman that also got Johnson & Johnson from, you know, in her area, that I think developed a clot and ended up with a stroke. And yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, there was just a lot of bad publicity around the Johnson & Johnson. So I never bothered entertaining the thought or the comparison to the others. I went with Pfizer, again, simply because that's what was offered to our organization at the time. And I personally, I waited. I didn't jump right away on getting vaccinated. I did wait. I weighed my options, you know, the pros and the cons. I talked to other people that I knew received it. I waited months to see how things went for them before finally making a decision. And what drove my decision was, you know, first, I have 2 small children. I'm a nurse, so I'm always going to be exposed to it, you know, somehow. And of course, my bodybuilding career, because it seems too that now in order to travel or to make traveling a little easier, you know, a lot of places were requiring that, you know, you show proof of being vaccinated. Right. And so that was, you know, some of my driving factors in making that decision.
Yeah, so we literally just got ours yesterday. We got Pfizer, our first shot Pfizer yesterday. So, and it was kind of the same situation. We waited, and then, you know, I was talking to my wife and I was saying, well, so we basically have two choices. Either we decide never to take it, or we're gonna take it, but then why are we waiting at this point? Well, it's kind of like, well, I mean, we could take it now, we could take it in 6 months. If we know we're gonna take it, then what does it matter, you know? So so we just had to go ahead. And like you said, the traveling aspect of it is also, you know, our family, well, her side of the family lives in Tampa, Florida. So we, you know, driving is okay, but it's like, you don't want to drive 12 hours or whatever it is, 10 out every time to go see him. You know, it becomes problematic there too. So, anyways, yeah. So to pivot from medicine to bodybuilding, you said that you were in the Puerto Rican Pro. Is that correct?
Yes. So I've done 2 shows so far this season. Puerto Rico Pro was amazing. It was, as you know, I'm not sure if you know, but they moved the venue to the Bahamas. Beautiful country. The people were hospitable. The venue was great. In my category, it was only open and there were 20 women. Wow. And the women were phenomenal. I came in 14th place. I did get 3rd call outs. My coach and I agreed that it was the best package to date. Right. But I had a hard time, you know, receiving the worst call out to date. Yeah. That's the lowest that I've ever placed in any competition that I've been in. But I gracefully accepted the feedback. It wasn't really negative, you know, it was pretty much the same that I get most of the time, which is your conditioning is great, your stage presence is wonderful. We just need more of you, you know, bigger. Right.
That's kind of the thing, right? Like it's they always like want people to be bigger, especially in. So tell people that don't know, like, what division are you in? What division do you compete in?
Yes, so I am part of the International Federation of Bodybuilding, IFBB, and I am a women's physique competitor. And I've been that since I started in 2018.
And what made you decide to go in that division? Because that tends to be the more muscular division for females. I mean, the only way up is to go to bodybuilding. So that's the only one left. So
and most people they grow into physique, right? They start off maybe like in figure and then physique. Yeah. My arms. my arms, there you go, pretty much. It was the deciding factor. So, you know, when I partnered up with a local coach here in Miami, Marty Feldman of Design Performance, great guy. I followed his wife, who's also a women's physique competitor. Her name is Jeannie Feldman. She's been to the Olympia, she's been to Arnold, phenomenal woman. And I followed her for quite some time, and came to know of her husband, who was her coach as well, that way. And so he introduced himself to me on Instagram. He's like, you know, have you ever thought about competing? I'm like, no. And at the time, I was just, you know, I had my 2nd child. I knew that I was done. And I just wanted to, as they say, get my body back. So I started weight training some more. I've always been athletic. I've always weight trained, but not to, I didn't take it seriously until I knew that I was done having kids. So, you know, I went in a little harder. I love to run. I even did half marathons, etc. But he, you know, taught to me. He's like, you have, you know, the foundation to compete. You know, why don't you give it a try? So when we finally met up and we talked, and he met me in person, he's like, you could go figure or physique. He says, but I have a feeling that they're probably going to move you out of figure quickly and into physique, because your arms are huge, you know. And he's, you know, figure girls have mostly, you know, nice round shoulders. For me, it was like my biceps took no time to grow. And he says, I just think that's going to push you out into physique. So he says, well, we could always cross over. I said, I'm only doing one. I'm not getting on stage and doing figure in heels
Yeah.
And also then having to learn the whole routine for physique.
Right.
I said, I said, this was nerve-wracking enough. I said, let's pick one. And since I know my arms are not going anywhere, let's just do physique.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I fell into it, pretty much.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because it's like you'll see some competitors and they'll have to like stop training a certain body part to stay in a certain division. And for me, it's kind of like counterintuitive to what bodybuilding or training with weights is, because it just logically you're like, the progression is to move forward, to lift more, to be like bigger, to, you know, that kind of direction. If you have to take steps now to lift less,
right,
it's kind of like, well, what are you doing?
What am I
You know?
doing?
Yeah,
Right.
it's so, yeah, I completely understand your decision to, what did you to go to Physique? What did you think of Shanique Grant just retiring? Did you have
I was
thoughts about that?
surprised. I was
Mhm.
surprised. You know, because when she first won Olympia, of course, you know, there was a lot of discussion from, you know, commentators and people who followed her career that she, you know, she was probably going to reign for years to come in that number one spot. And I think too that I remember her even claiming it, that she was going to be around for a while. So yeah, I was a little surprised that, you know, after this last Olympia that she retired. But you know, everyone's decision for doing what they do is personal. You can't do anything but respect it. I mean, only she really knows what it took of her to get her to that physique and to get her on that Olympia stage. And, you know, if she felt that it was sacrificing anything to help her, you know, become a mom later in years, because I understood too that there was some discussion about her wanting to, you know, have a family and so on. You know, she would know better than any of us. So, you know, I respect her decision. I respected her decision then to do what she had to do. But now I hear too that there's talk of her coming back, but going into wellness. So
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think with her physique? Would she do well in like wellness? She seems super upper body like developed, you know, for wellness. But you know, I mean, you never know. But what do you think about that?
you know, I think that you won't ever know until you try something.
Yeah, yeah,
You
that's
know,
true. That's
you
true.
have to try it and see what the feedback is going to be. You know, we make assumptions based on what we think we know about these
Hmm.
divisions, but they're constantly changing as far as what the expectations are, I think, and depending on who's judging, and then of course who you're being compared to.
Right.
So you know, we won't know until she makes that debut and you know, see what happens from there.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, she was training to be in women's physique. So who knows
Right.
what she would look like if she trains to be in
To
wellness.
be in wellness,
Yeah. So,
exactly.
but there were two surprises for me. One, of course, was the one her retiring, but the one right prior to that was that she came in second. I was very surprised. I mean, no disrespect, obviously, to the girl that won. I can't remember her name now, but
Sarah.
yeah, Sarah. But I was very surprised. I was very surprised because I thought Shanique brought the same, if not a better package than the year prior, and you know, so uh, it. I mean, I'm not a judge. I don't know. I wasn't there, but you know, it's hard for me looking at pictures to justify that decision. Were you surprised about that?
No, I have to say I wasn't, because you know, I'm a fan of both
Hmm.
women. I really am, both women. I noticed Sarah last year when she came in second. And to me, it was close. I think it was close.
Okay.
Her conditioning is insane.
Mm.
And when you look at, and I'm, you know, again, it's just pictures that we see. We don't
Mm.
see these people from the standpoint of the view of the judges. So we never know. And then of course, you know, at the time for Olympia, um, I went to Vegas the year that Shanique won, but you know, you're sitting all the way up and
Right.
you're trying to catch everything. And then the second year I saw it from pay-per-view. So again, you know, how we see things and how we perceive it is very different. But having followed Sarah, her conditioning is insane.
Yeah.
And when you look at her lower body development and you know, her hamstring and quad split, her glutes, I'm not surprised that she claimed the title this year. I
Mm-hmm.
think she was really close last year. But yeah, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
I think I really do believe it was her time. She bought a really good package. She really did.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see your point of view. Definitely.
Yeah.
I thought the pay-per-view was amazing. I thought that was a great way to do it. It looked so legitimate. It looked good.
It
I mean,
did.
I think they need to continue to do that no matter
I
what.
think it would be great. I loved it because before that I got to actually attend a live Olympia, I've always watched these YouTube channels that were
Right, the live
that was
streaming.
airing it. But
Yeah.
that pay-per-view, I went to Orlando that year, but the tickets sold out so quickly. So we ended up going to Orlando just so we could experience it wasn't a lot of vendors, but we wanted to just be in the midst of it.
Right.
But we ended up staying in an Airbnb and doing the pay-per-view, and it was great. It was great.
Yeah. I heard not to switch subjects, but I heard a lot of people got COVID in the Olympia. Like
I heard that too.
Yeah, I was talking to Missy Truscott, and that's what she was saying. She was saying that like a lot of people got COVID, but she's not the only person I heard it from. I mean, there was a lot of people that were saying that. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, there were athletes, there were people in the audience, and as a nurse, when I heard it, I was just like, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised. So when we made the decision, when it happened to me that we couldn't get tickets, my boyfriend and I, my boyfriend's name is Keith Holmes. He's also a competitor. He's a classic physique pro.
Okay. Very cool.
But we both were like, maybe this happened for a reason.
Yeah. Well, and you have such a
our Airbnb. We ordered takeout. We have a good time in our little space watching, everything. So
you have such a unique perspective too, because it's like, I'm sure there's other people in the medical field that are, competitors, but having so many years in the medical field, being in a unit that takes care of people from COVID, with COVID, I should say, you have such a unique perspective and an understanding, like a fuller, more deeper understanding of viruses and how they can affect and how they spread. And you would think that people know, but it's it's not real until you're in it, right? Like when you start seeing people that are like on death's door, because of this virus, it starts becoming a lot more real to you,
Right. And even traveling to Orlando for us, when we made that decision, we were both a little hesitant. But we took every precaution. We made sure that we were always sanitizing. We brought our own, stuff to keep the Airbnb clean. We wore our masks wherever we were supposed to. And we were in and out of spaces. We didn't, really partake in a lot of things that weekend. But, even with Keith being a firefighter, he was also, a first responder and seeing a lot of that. So he experienced pretty much the same as I did when the pandemic first hit. So yeah, we weren't surprised. We weren't surprised when we saw the crowd after the fact, because I don't remember seeing so much of the crowd on pay-per-view, but I saw pictures online and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, there were a lot of people there.
Very easy for that virus to just jump from person to person, Yeah, that's something. So with you getting this call out that you weren't particularly happy with, what's the plan now? Are you taking time to grow until next season? Are you going to compete again this year?
I'm going to compete again. It's always been since I've been with my coach. His name is Kevin Wilson of Team Incredibles. He's based out of Atlanta. He goes by KD with the muscle on Instagram. Since we've been together, we've always aimed for at least 3 to 4 shows during the summer. I mostly compete during the summer because being a parent, I really want to make sure that when my kids are back to school, I'm dedicated to what they need for the school year and being there for them. I train, but it's just not as intense. But yeah, we're looking at doing one more show, Tampa Pro, which is in 4 weeks. I did it last year. It was an incredible show. So I want to come back. So pretty much I've already been, hitting my meal plan and put in some time. For me, as they've mentioned, and what my coach and I know, conditioning is never an issue. It's just growing into it. Muscle maturity, you hear that word a lot when it comes to growing into this sport. My situation has been arms is not a problem. My legs have grown. It's just that I have high lats. My lats sit pretty high, and so I'm right now using this time to concentrate on really bringing them out, and hopefully to tapering at the waist a little bit more to really give myself that an illusion of a wider back. That's what we're working on pretty much.
Yeah, that it's tough when your size is the issue, because if size is the issue, you need time. It's like if conditioning is the issue, you can, I mean, you still kind of
Easily
need time,
change the
but you can,
diet, change your cardio.
right. And you can quit much more quicker. You can adjust your conditioning, but when size, you need more size. You almost need like an off season, you know, the entire off season to come in. Do you pick your shows based upon who's there, or do you just based upon what show you like?
It's been for me so far based on what shows I like. I could never, I don't think that I could pick a show based on who shows up or not. I mean, that's just, that to me is just kind of weird, because it's just like people want to compete.
Right.
And as it is, you know, for women's physique, we don't have a lot of options available to us. We don't get, I haven't, at least on the schedule, see a lot of shows. As a matter of fact, I feel like there's been less this year than in past years, because I know of a couple of promoters that pulled women's physique out of their lineup, you know? So for me, I try to pick shows that are close to home. So then this way too, you know, expenses, it's easier to drive than to fly. The Puerto Rico Pro was one show that I've always wanted to do. So of course, even with it being in the Bahamas, it was something that was already on my radar for this year, and I'm glad I did it. Like I said, the venue was beautiful. And I love a lot of the Wings of Strength and Tim Gardner shows. They're very well put together. And the venues are always great. The judges that show up are, you know, absolutely great people. They give great feedback. So, you know, for me, it's just really, I pick shows based on location. And, you know, if it's something that I've seen people do in the past and I've admired the athletes that have shown up, I want to be part of that. So that's helped me pick my shows too.
Yeah, that's I see where you're coming from. And also when you mentioned that there was 20 girls in the Puerto Rico, to me, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that seems like a lot for women's physique. That's a lot of women.
And I think it's because a lot of us are making up for last year.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Because COVID really did keep a lot of people away. Because, for example, I did Optimum Classic in 2020. That was in Shreveport, but I don't remember how many women showed up, but it was much smaller. This year there were, I believe, 22 women's physique in open. And I believe I came in 11th place out of the 22. And the year before I came in 10th place in open, 11th in masters this year. Last year I came in 5th in open, second in masters. Same show.
Yeah. So it's just a lot more people. So it's tougher to get the more competition. So
yeah.
It's interesting because it's like usually what happens is you'll have like the higher in muscularity you go, from what I see, the less competitors. So the bikini has ton of people, and then you go figure, it's a little less. Women's physique a little less. Bodybuilding is even less. So it's like, but now with COVID, it's like it completely shifted everything. So now there's less shows, so everybody's trying to like hop into whatever shows are left to qualify points.
And I think that's what's happening, and that's why so many of us are showing up. But interestingly enough, New York Pro, I thought that was going to be a huge show, and I think in women's physique they only had 6 competitors. In New York physique. But then since New York, like I said, Optimum Classic had 22, Puerto Rico Pro had 20, I have a feeling that Chicago Pro is going to be even bigger because
I wonder if what happened was everyone thought like you that it was going to be a big show, and for those who picked their shows based upon like how many people are there, they probably didn't want to do it. So what happened was nobody showed up. So it was like 60 people, and then now they're all showing up at the other shows. You know.
Yeah.
So,
and I think Chicago Pro is going to be phenomenal too.
Mhm.
I did consider Chicago Pro, but I wanted to give myself a little bit more time. So I think, you know, like I said, putting off Chicago and then just waiting until Tampa, I think would be good, because one thing, I know size takes time, but what my coach and I have noticed, I love to do this thing where I compare myself from every previous show and I put them side by side, and I change every time. You know, they give me feedback. We need tighter glutes and tighter hamstrings. No problem. I'll bring that to you. Mission accomplished. You want a wider back? Okay. So I'm going to be training back 2 to 3 times a week now. So for me to put on size, it's not too much of an issue. It's just been like, just the consistency. I don't really necessarily have to lift heavy. My coach and I feel that my muscle responds well to, food and just pretty much time under tension. So that's what we're, focusing on. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's a big question as far as, this would probably take us into another show, but there's a big question, between like time under tension or lifting heavy weight. Like what is more beneficial? I mean, everybody responds differently. But yeah, that's kind of going around, the internet, as people are weighing in and stuff like that. So it's always interesting to find someone who isn't necessarily thinking of always lifting super heavy, because majority of the time that's kind of what you see. Yeah. So
yeah, I rather focus on that as they say, that mind muscle connection. Like I need to feel what I'm focusing on. Like if it's the lats, I need to feel that squeeze. I need to feel the tension. I need to feel that after it's all said and done and I get home at the end of that training session, that muscle is killing me, like it's sore. And that's mission accomplished. Because the heavier you go, at least for me, I'm only speaking for myself, when I go too heavy, I lose form. I'm at more risk to injure myself. You're so focused on trying to lift the weight than training that muscle that I feel like you just completely have just lost and wasted time in that training session. And some people do it, as they say, for the gram, or, it's an ego thing. For me, it's like I said, I mean, if I want to accomplish what these judges want to see, I am going to focus on what I could feel when it comes to training that muscle. And yes, sometimes heavy weight is necessary. It really is necessary to help that muscle grow. But when it comes to, for me, like back training and arms, any upper body, we haven't really concentrated on a lot of heavy weight. It's all about being, for us, form, not sacrificing it, and that time under tension. The most weight that I ever put on me is for my legs, because my legs had always been small. And so we went really heavy during my improvement season, and it paid off, because now I barely have to touch them.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great. Yeah. And for me personally, and I completely get where you're coming from, as far as like you focus so much on trying to pull that heavy weight that like you miss the actual point of the workout. The only times that heavy weight comes into play for me are like compound movements, like deadlifts and things like that. But but when you're talking about isolation, like curls and just single arm or whatever the case may be, like those, I think it's super important to have proper form, have tension, mind muscle connection, because just swinging the weight at that point does nothing. It's just useless at that point.
You just wasted, a whole hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym.
So, I was noticing your your nails, and I'm actually colorblind, but I can see that they're bright. So it reminded me of the situation that I'm sorry, I can't remember the girl's name, but the runner that there's that controversy going on now. Are you aware of it? That they're
The
suspending
one
her?
that won her spot, in the young girl with the really
Yeah,
long
yeah, yeah,
nails.
yeah. They
Each his own, like let me tell you, for me, you will only see nails when I have a show.
Oh, I got you.
That is the only time my nails get done, because between being a nurse and a hand washing freak, especially during these times, and having kids, and my nails, I always wear them natural and short.
Yeah, I'm sure that's like the least of your concerns, is you're like running around trying to, manage your teams and all that.
Exactly. I only get them done when it's showtime.
Yeah.
And because I have another show in 4 weeks, I'll keep these tips on and probably just, change the color to match my suit. But once I'm done with my season,
they come off, huh? That's it. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well,
I keep clean. I keep my cuticles cut, but like this length for me is already too much.
Yeah, too much.
And this is considered short for some people.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like I remember my wife showed me. I didn't know who she was, but she showed me that girl running, and the nails were like so long. And and I get it. That's her thing. That's her shtick. That's how people will recognize her. But besides her, obviously talent. But yeah, it's always interesting when people have like such long nails. I'm like, how do you
function?
Yeah, how do you work out? I was speaking to years ago to not years, actually months ago, to Dasanka, and she has the same, like she has long nails too, and she lifts with those, and I'm like, that's intense. I'm like, you got long nails and you can lift with that? You're committed at that point.
It's a skill. It's a skill, I think, because I could never manage.
That's funny. So just to kind of wrap up, if somebody wanted to reach out to you for like tips or training or other, podcasts, what would be the best way to do that? You can plug that in now.
Yes. So I'm very active on Instagram. I had an old account, but I don't know what happened to it. It was hacked and Instagram shut it down. But really, Instagram is where I spend most of my time. And my page is DEvolution04 _IFBB _pro. DM me. That pretty much is open. I respond very quickly. And if someone wants tips or wants me for a podcast or whatever the case is, that's the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Great. And I'll put everything down at the bottom, so it'll be easy for them to, to get that taken care of. So
thank you.
Well, Daphney, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
It's been my pleasure. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You take care. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.